Hi, Roy here, and welcome again to another edition of The Right Has Left. I am your host, Roy Garden, and welcome to my podcast. As always, this show deals with a lot of news from the White House and Donald Trump's administration, so let's get right into it, because that's who we're going to talk about today on this show, is mostly Donald Trump. So, President Donald Trump once again has raised questions surrounding his mental acuity after he seemed to forget that he was the person who appointed Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell. As you all know, Jerome Powell has been in the news a lot lately because Trump's not too happy with this guy. And it's not Jerome Powell's fault. He is doing his job. He is supposed to be independent of the rest of the congressional group that we have and our U.S. government, but Trump sometimes tends to forget that. So, again, he's been basically admonishing Powell for what's going on with interest rates, and he's upset with him because he's not capitulating his economic plan. Trump has gone on to say he's terrible. He's a terrible Fed chairman about Jerome Powell this past week, and I'm surprised he was appointed. I am surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in and he extended him. Oh, really? Well, folks, it was Donald Trump that appointed Jerome Powell back in his first administration in 2017. He actually nominated Powell for the Fed chairman and to replace Janet Yellen. And now, if you don't believe me, watch these two clips.
He's a terrible Fed chair. I was surprised he was appointed. I was surprised, frankly, that Biden put him in and extended him. But they did. So, no, we're not planning on doing anything. We're very concerned. He's doing a little renovation for $2.5 billion of the Fed, building a renovation, and they have a close to $900 million cost overrun, and it's a shame. But the biggest cost overrun is the cost overrun for interest rates. It is my pleasure and my honor to announce my nomination of Jerome Powell to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. Congratulations, Jay.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Today is another important milestone on the path to restoring economic opportunity for the American people. In just a short time, we have already made incredible strides. But if we are to sustain all of this tremendous economic progress, our economy requires sound monetary policy and prudent oversight of our banking system.
Trump has also now have been diagnosed with a vascular condition, which his press secretary finally had to acknowledge after several videos have been surfacing showing extensive makeup on his right hand. He's been trying to hide it, and also the media has been showing some extensive swelling going on in his ankles. Now, the president's press secretary finally came out and said, okay, he does have a condition. It's called chronic venous insufficiency, which does occur when leg veins fail to pump blood into the heart, causing it to pool in the lower limbs, which can then become swollen, as we have all seen. Veins and valves propel the blood up and out of the leg and back towards the heart. Blood flowing from the legs to the heart is moving against gravity, as we all know, which can make that process more difficult. Now, the White House stated that the condition showing on his hand was caused by aggressive handshaking, which some physicians are questioning that. Overall, it is the president's advanced age and his choice of diet that has caused the condition to become to come to light, actually. And many professional physicians have reported that also in their blogs. So, having said that, there's nothing wrong with things like this occurring if you're becoming advanced in your age. Trump likes to still think that he's a Superman, which in fact that he's not. He's getting older, like all of us, and it's just deal with it, Mr. President. I know we obviously don't want anything to become worse, but he does need, of course, to watch that. So, having said that, let's get into our top story. And yes, what our top story is about mostly is this guy. Yes, Jeffrey Epstein is back in the news and probably will be for quite a while. So Donald Trump has responded to mounting criticism of his administration's handling of the Jeffrey Epstein case, saying that he doesn't understand all the buzz. He said he's dead, and has been for a long time. The president said that when he was asked about the frustration from his supporters, he was never a big factor in terms of what's going on. He says, I really just don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. Watch this clip.
Attorney General, no, I know it's a hoax. It's started by Democrats. It's been run by the Democrats for 4 years. You had Christopher Wray and these characters and Comey before him. And it's a bad group. It started, actually, look at the Steele dossier that turned out to be a total hoax. The 51 agents, the intelligence, so-called intelligence agents, it was a hoax. It's all been a big hoax. It's perpetrated by the Democrats. And some stupid Republicans and foolish Republicans fall into the net, and so they try and do the Democrats' work. The Democrats are good for nothing other than these hoaxes. They're bad for policy. They're bad for picking candidates that can get elected. Like in New York, we have a communist running. He may get elected too, actually, but he'll destroy the city.
And of course, with all of this comes his Attorney General. Yes, Pam Bondi. She is also part of all this news. He said that his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, should release whatever she thinks is credible on Epstein. And, of course, she herself has declined to really answer questions about all of this issue, other than the fact that, of course, she's going to instruct that the grand jury transcripts be released. Watch this clip.
Nothing about Epstein. I'm not going to talk about Epstein.
Now, why a lot of folks are now starting saying that Pam Bondi should resign, she was defined, as you just saw in that clip, that I'm not going to go anywhere. As long as the president wants me to be here, I'm going to be here, she stated, as you just seen in that clip. And, of course, other people are starting to, question what's going on. Mike Johnson, he showed a rare break from Trump's loyalty by joining other conservatives and calling for the release of more documents, thus the release of the grand jury transcripts. The problem here is there's also a lot of video with Epstein in it that a lot of people want to see, because the videos don't lie. Transcripts, they can be released, but they can also be doctored, as you well know, and things being omitted that maybe should be there. But I don't know if you're ever going to see those videos come to light. Now, the administration said that everything should be out there and let the people decide. Other people who are been really loyal to the president, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and John Kennedy are among those who have also called out on the Trump administration to release more information. The uproar about the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein case comes from after the Justice Department and the FBI released a memo last week saying that they found no evidence that the late financier had kept an incriminating client list or evidence that would lead to the prosecution of third parties. Now, the U.S. president attempted to put a stamp on his authority on his party, dismissing that the thing was basically a hoax. At the White House this past Wednesday, he said certain Republicans got duped by the Democrats to pursue conspiracy theories. And as you saw in the previous video, he referred to those his people in his party, calling him to release those files as some stupid Republicans. Now, with him just saying that now, the MAGA party is starting to get a little angry with Trump. So his base is starting to deteriorate a little bit. He said they're wasting a lot of time with the guy who's obviously has had some very serious problems. He's dead, he's gone. All right, so knock it off. In an earlier Truth Social post, he wrote that the Democrats had a new scam going on, comparing it to what attempts to link him to the Russian interference case in the 2016 election. As you can see by his Truth Social post here, he said, my past supporters have bought into this bullshit. Hook, line, and sinker, he said. They haven't learned their lesson and probably never will. Again, this is causing his Magna base to, break away from him a little bit. And he said even after being conned by the lunatic left for 8 long years, conspiracy theories that the Epstein didn't kill himself beginning to spread also immediately. A lot of folks think that did Epstein really kill himself? Because there's some time lapse on the jail video. And after Epstein's 2019 death in a New York City jail cell, he was waiting, of course, his trial on sex trafficking charges. He thought his words would be put in things, but he was wrong. Now, here's the interesting thing on my top story part on the Epstein files. Data from Google shows that searches for the Epstein spiked after Trump posted that. It was also notable that the post on the president's own social network received many frustrated response from his supporters. So data from the Google shows that searches for Epstein spiked after Trump posted this. It was also notable that on the post on the president's own social network, he received many frustrated responses. So, as I just mentioned, that Trump's base is starting to do it a little bit. And of course, he gets more and more defiant as that happens. So he's also done this. He has filed a $10 billion lawsuit now against the Wall Street Journal, as you all know about this in the media, with media mogul Rupert Murdoch. I can't talk today. Media mogul Rupert Murdoch, who happens to own Fox News as well. So he filed this suit also in South Florida so he can get his friendly federal judges, district judges, to help him on this, and that's why he filed it. It's probably going to wind up in court in Fort Pierce, and we all know the judge there in Fort Pierce that was really friendly to Donald Trump. So he did this after the newspaper published the story reporting on his ties to wealthy financier Jeffrey Epstein. The move came shortly just after the Justice Department asked a federal court on this Friday, just yesterday, to unseal those grand jury transcripts, which he hoped would quiet down all this crap, but it's not going to happen. So anyway, he's trying to contain everything and put the fires out. I don't know if it's going to help or not. So, he had promised to sue the Wall Street Journal if they published that transcript, which also, he says that Trump drew a outline of a naked woman on that. And he says it's all a hoax. He never did that. That's not his style of writing. He would never do that. And of course, you got to keep in mind that this letter dates back when Trump was much younger, so you got to keep that in mind. It was included in a 2003 album compiled for Epstein's 50th birthday. Trump denied he wrote that letter. He said, quote, "It's false, it's malicious, and defamatory." But Pam Bondi did cite there are tens of thousands of videos with Epstein and more files on Epstein, as I just reported earlier, so we really don't know what's going to come out of all of this. The bottom line is the fact of the matter is, this is never going to go away until everybody sees everything. And most of the people believe Trump, in one way or another, has been involved with Jeffrey Epstein. The whole question is to what extent and how much. And until that question is answered, if it's ever going to be answered, we will never know. So, this Epstein thing is just is really unbelievable. So let's move on with this last part about the Epstein thing going on here, and that is this unfortunate woman, Maureen Comey. She's the federal prosecutor, or was the federal prosecutor in Manhattan, who did play a key role in the criminal cases against Jeffrey Epstein and Maxwell, and she had just released a letter since she did get fired to her colleagues. And she said, if a career prosecutor can be fired without reason, fear may seep into the decisions of those who remain, she wrote. And in the letters, which was first observed by the online newspaper Political, it says, "Do not let that happen. Fear is the tool of a tyrant welded to suppress independent thought." Maureen is, of course, as you all know, is the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, who was fired also by President Donald Trump as soon as he was elected in his first term. She most recently led the prosecution of Sean Diddy Combs for the Southern District of New York. So Pam Bondi fired this lady. Now, the Trumps cast the lawsuit as part of his efforts to punish news outlets, including ABC and CBS, which both have reached multi-million-dollar settlement deals with the president after he took them to court. He said this lawsuit is filed not only on behalf of your favorite president, me. Now, if that isn't egotistical, and I don't know what is, hey, me, but also in order to continue standing up for all all Americans who will no longer tolerate the abusive wrongdoings of the fake news media, he wrote. Again, Donald Trump has got this ego as big as all outdoors. For him to say, me, man, it's all about me. I often wonder, this guy, he's more of an entertainer than I think he is of anything. Some of the stuff that he posts on Truth Social just is unbelievable. Now, speaking of the media and specifically CBS, we now have this sad story. Yes, Stephen Colbert, The Late Show, which has been an icon of CBS for years in the late night entertainment business, competing against NBC's The Tonight Show. Well, sadly, yeah, it's gone. CBS Paramount canned The Late Night Show with Stephen Colbert. The show will end in May of 2026. The Late Show, which was started by David Letterman, as we all know, before he retired out, has had a loyal following for decades. While CBS data is solely for financial reasons, it takes no rocket scientist to understand that this is all part of Paramount's merger with Skydance, needing approval from the FCC, which Trump now controls. And the recent settlement by CBS of the lawsuit, I have to all think, and a lot of people will agree with me, that some of the behind-the-scenes dealings and settlement, which was kept from the public, is, of course, that CBS needs to tone down all of its anything to do that's negative against Donald Trump. And, of course, we all know Colbert likes to make fun of Donald Trump. I mean, that's his, First Amendment rights to do so. He's a comedian. Parody is part of the stuff that can come out with talking about Donald Trump. But Trump does not like to be presented in any kind of a negative light. And as we all know, Donald Trump is trying to control all the media. It's become an authoritarian country. He is trying to strip away everybody's right to say anything that they like about him. And if it's in a negative light, you're going to pay the consequences. So CBS, quoting financial reasons, got rid of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert. So there you go. You can read between the lines. It's not the financial reasons. Paramount and CBS has got lots of money, and they could have kept that on. But I'm sure that was part of the agreement, was get rid of that. So other news that's going on, of course, that we need to look at is, of course, Alcatraz, the real Alcatraz, not Alligator Alcatraz, but Alcatraz. Pam Bondi recently toured the Alcatraz Island, which is off of San Francisco. It is a fading, decrepit old prison that is presently being run by the National Park Service. And, she's going through there looking at things. And why is she doing that? Because they want to reopen Alcatraz. Yeah, they actually really want to open up Alcatraz again. So why are they doing that? But the fact of the matter is that Donald Trump is willing to put billions of dollars back into whatever is needed to open it up to put more detainees in there. And of course, he's saying the dangerous are the most dangerous criminals. So perhaps maybe other people will be put in there. But Alcatraz, and of course, if that happens, the Park Service will have nothing to do with Alcatraz. And of course, all tours will stop there, obviously. But do you know what it's going to cost to reopen Alcatraz? Because Trump has already put out some cost bids to see what it would be. Over $2 billion, and that's with a B, $2 billion to bring Alcatraz up to any kind of an operational basis. And of course, as you know, as we've seen with Alligator Alcatraz, which we'll talk about here in a minute, if they put any money in at all, it's just going to be to get the drinking water and some of the buildings back up to code for the employees and the guards. The hell with the people they're going to be put in there. They'll probably use the cells that are already there and just leave them at that. Yeah, maybe they'll fix some toilets and some of the water, but other than that, they're not going to put a lot of money into the cells. They're going to put all the money into the other infrastructure of Alcatraz. But $2 billion. Now, this is why, all of the money is being pulled from other programs in the United States so they can dump it all into Homeland Security and things like these prisons. So, it's sad. It is that this kind of stuff has to go on, that we're dealing with what we're dealing here with immigration. So the Trump administration is also moving full steam ahead with plans to gut the education department after seeing a green light of what's going on with pulling all the money from what's called the clawback program, as you've been hearing about this. So programs like PBS, they're going to lose all their funding, and so is most of our foreign aid money. So after they got that green light from the Supreme Court that they can do that, they're in celebration, and they are ready to go to lay off a bunch of people, and they're going to do exactly that. They're killing everything with PBS. They're laying off people from the State Department. They are completely laying off almost all of the people of the Department of Education. So they said they need to return that all to the states. Well, the states don't have any money to really do all about that, but they were hoping some lawsuits could be filed to maybe save the Department of Education. But we don't know how well that's going to go. They have filed some lawsuits with the first U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals, which will actually make the final determination of legality for the lower courts after the decision. Either party could potentially take the case back to the Supreme Court, but we know what the Supreme Court's going to do with all this, since they're all, well, most of them are in bed with Donald Trump, with the exception of a couple. Nothing's going to happen. They're going to kill the Department of Education. So I don't know how far this lawsuit will take anything, but at least it kind of stalls it for a little while. So also President Donald Trump this past week threatened Russia with steep tariffs and announced a rejuvenated pipeline for American weapons to go back to Ukraine through NATO, which they're going to pay for it, he said. We're not just going to give it to Ukraine. They're going to have to give us money for it. He is starting to harden his stance a little bit towards Moscow. And he's always said, I'm a great friend of Putin. But now he's starting to take a little bit of a harder stance because he's been frustrated with Putin because he keeps blowing his peace accord agreements. He says one thing and then he goes out and bombs people in the middle of the night, said Trump. But we'll see how far that goes. But he promised to swiftly resolve the war started by Russia. As you know, President Trump, when he was running for president, said he could stop this Ukraine war on day one of his presidency. Of course, that never happened. He says a lot of things that does another. That was 3 years ago now that the invasion has been going on, and nobody's been willing to compromise and get anything done. So he complained that it just keeps going on. I'm getting tired of it. So he's going to put these steep tariffs in place. Now, speaking of these steep tariffs, here's the situation. He's given Russia 50 days, over 2 months, basically, up to 2 months, to get these, to settle this thing with Ukraine. In all of this time, in those 50 days, Russia will continue to bomb really what's left of Ukraine's infrastructure, killing more innocent people, just like, everything else that's going on with Israel bombing the Gaza Strip, that still goes on too. But, the problem is what they call collateral damage. All of these bombings, and it is the innocent people who have nothing to do, have no allegiance to any, group. They're getting killed. Children are getting killed. Women and children, families are getting destroyed. So Putin's got 50 days to discontinue what he's doing, and maybe on the 49th day at the last hour, he'll go back to President Trump and say, okay, I think we've got a peace deal here. Go on, stop the tariffs, So I don't know why he gave him such a long time to really do something about it. And again, will Trump, stop this and come up with something else like he has been? I don't know. So we'll just have to see what happens. But this stuff is crazy. 50 days. Can you believe it? I think I should have been a lot shorter than that. Moving on with the news, folks. Yes, Rosie O'Donnell and President Trump. President Donald Trump reignited a decades-old feud with comedian Rosie O'Donnell this past week, taking to his Truth social platform to write that he was considering revoking her citizenship because of the fact that Rosie O'Donnell is not in the best interests of our great country. I'm giving serious considerations to taking away her citizenship, Trump wrote. She's a threat to humanity and should be remain in the wonderful world of Ireland where she's presently residing if they want her. God bless America. So CNN, who reported on this story, went to their analyst. He is a professor of Georgetown Law, and he said this past Saturday that Trump's threat to coercive extradition was partially unconstitutional for good reason. It is difficult to denaturalize a U.S. citizen and even harder to cancel that because once you're a U.S. citizen, especially people like Rosie O'Donnell, it's unconstitutional to revoke that citizenship. She was born in the United States, and even the Supreme Court has recognized meaningful constitutional limits and entitlement to meaningful judicial review, even in those cases. So to say that, he's going to get rid of Rosie O'Donnell's citizenship just because she happens to be residing in Ireland because she's sick and tired of what's going on in the United States. And a lot of people are starting to not leave the United States and live in other countries. Portugal, Spain, Sweden, Denmark, Ireland. Yeah, a lot of folks are starting to move out of here because they're scared. But Rosie O'Donnell is also one of those people that has left. So again, you've got to wake up and see what's going on here. With people vacating the United States, they're scared, they're worried, they're concerned, especially seniors. A lot of seniors are starting to leave the United States. We've got to look at the snowbirds. Are the Canadians? I live here in Florida. How many Canadians are going to return to the United States this coming winter? That's just a few months away when they start, migrating back, if in fact they do, because now they're under a lot of paperwork to even come back in the U.S. So we'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen there with that situation and our foreign visitors that like to come here in the winter. All right, the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, rose 0.3% in June, bringing the annual inflation rate up to 2.7%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is the highest annual rate since February. Core inflation, which excludes food and energy, also increased by 0.2% for the month, with the annual rate at 2.9%. Key points about this, folks, just so I can try to bring it into layman's language. Overall, the CPI increased by 0.3% in June, with an annual rate of 2.7%. Core CPI increased by 0.2% for the month, with an annual rate of 2.9%. Contributing factors: the increase is partly due to the impact of those tariffs, particularly in things like furniture, toys, recreational goods, and automobiles, as well as rebounding gasoline prices. Gasoline, just so you know, has gone up 23 cents a gallon. It was down to almost $2.79 here in the state of Florida. It's back up to $3.15 to $3.20 in some places, and I'm sure it's because of those threats of tariffs against the Soviet Union, Russia, I should say, not Soviet Union. And also, the Federal Reserve has prompted President Trump to call out on the Federal Reserve to lower its interest rate. This is another thing. Jerome Powell is a smart guy, and he is, of course, the Federal Reserve is the one that controls the interest rates. And I'll talk about something here really quickly. Trump's all over Jerome Powell about remodeling the Federal Reserve building, which was budgeted by Congress to do so clear back in 2017. It has taken them a while to get to there. And yes, the cost of repairing things with the infrastructure has gone up, as most things has. But, Trump's been all over Jerome Powell about this remodeling project. Well, Congress approved that, a long time ago. So it's not Jerome Powell just saying, hey, I think I'm just going to remodel the Federal Reserve building. And he's even now called on an independent counsel to look at it to see if anything can be cut from the project to save money. But, but Trump can put gold fixtures in the White House. He can put up gigantic flagpoles in the South Lawn, tearing apart some of the Rose Garden. He can do that. But if Jerome Powell does something, you can't do that. So anyway, let's get back on topic here. So the next CPI report will be covering July. It is scheduled to be released August 12th. The bottom line, inflation is starting to come back, as I just mentioned. So, it is what it is. Now, let's get back on this clawback bill. Congress passed the clawback bill on Friday. It's going to the president to be signed. As I mentioned, this has a lot to do with the PBS and NPR, and it has a lot to do with our foreign aid. So it's unfortunate, but and I've got some comments about this in just a minute. But the bill requested by President Donald Trump to claw back $9 billion in foreign aid and federal funding for public broadcasting. This is funny because a lot of the Republicans says, well, we need to do something. This stuff is a waste of money. But they can put $2 billion to reopen Alcatraz, but they can strip money from foreign aid that helps some of these poor third world countries. And NPR and PBS, 20% of their budget was coming from, funding from the federal government for this. They can cut all that. But this idea where these Republicans have the audacity to sit there and say, well, it's unnecessary money. They just want to take all this money and put it into, ICE. That's what they're really doing. But it did advance. It took J.D. Vance's vote to get this to pass the Senate. And then, of course, Congress in 24 hours turned it right around the clawback bill and sent it back to the president to be signed and into law. Mitch McConnell, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins joined all the Democrats in voting no on this. And what the Senate did do, they did keep PFAR, the U.S. AIDS Relief Program, which was begun by President Bush, which was initially it was removed from this proposal. They put it back in. The $9.4 billion package of cuts. The president's emergency plan for AIDS relief supports HIV treatment worldwide. It has been credited with saving millions of lives in its 22 years. Again, I'm going to give you some pointers here about why this money is actually needed for National Public Radio and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and why they need that extra 20%. And I'm going to give you an example of, say, the state of Wyoming, which I'm ashamed at the two representatives, the congressional representative and John Barrasso, the senator from Wyoming. I'm ashamed with them, and I'll tell you why. Wyoming is a very rural state, and Wyoming only has 3 actual commercial television stations, and they're based out of Casper and Cheyenne. And they're 2 stations there. The Wyoming PBS station is in Riverton, Wyoming at Central Wyoming College, where I actually graduated from. Okay, when I was there, I actually kind of helped file some of the paperwork to get it started, but that's a different story. The main thing is Wyoming is so rural. In fact, a lot of people depend on the PBS station to get their news and information. I mean, they have some wonderful stories that they do about the Native Americans there and the culture of Wyoming and ranching, besides carrying the national programming from the PBS station. So since there's not a lot of people there, they don't have a lot of resources to do private fundraising. They don't because of the vast small population of the state of Wyoming. They really depended upon that 20%. And for John Barrasso and the congressional lady that, replaced, Mrs. Cheney, for them to vote no on this and saying that is a waste of money, they need to have their heads examined. That's just god-awful ridiculous. Also in Tennessee, where I lived for a while, Cookeville has a small PBS station. There's that and the one in Nashville. Well, of course, the one in Nashville has a larger base to do fundraising because of the vast population of Nashville. But in Cookeville, which is a very small city, that's a second PBS station there, and that one doesn't have a lot of resources to raise money, and they were dependent on the federal funding. So these holier-than-thou Republicans that voted to kill that so they can kiss Trump's golden ring is just unbelievable. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm making a bad. I'm griping a lot here, but it needs to be griped about a lot because I have a passion for PBS and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, NPR. You know, they use the term, well, they've all gone leftist. You know, again, this is another attempt of Trump controlling the media. You know, authoritarian country. He doesn't like, because they actually may have a little bit of different viewpoints than he does. So therefore, just crucify the entire public broadcasting system and take away their money. That'll show them, huh? You know, again, there were some Republicans that do have heart. 13 Republicans joined Democrat to try to kill this bill, but it didn't happen. So anyway, there you go. The other thing that's going on, of course, is the cryptocurrency bill. They're trying to get that through, too, and there's some holdouts on that, too. Again, Marjorie Taylor Greene, she opposed the procedural vote because of the Genius Act. It did not include a ban on digital currency issued by a central bank, such as the Federal Reserve. As you know, Donald Trump is now really big on cryptocurrency. He thinks that's the future of money, and that's really cool, so I'm going to get a bill through on that, too. He's been a vocal proponent of cryptocurrency in his second term and urged all Republicans to vote to advance the Genius Act. The Genius Act would set up a regulatory framework for stable coins or a form of cryptocurrency that is meant to be less volatile than the others. So, again, to my audience, you're saying, what the hell is the Genius Act? You know, what is that? So it's an acronym for Guiding and Establishing a National Innovation for U.S. Stablecoins. The Genius Act is the first United States bill that aims to regulate cryptocurrencies, in this case, stablecoins, which the Trump family has a vast interest in, by the way. Stablecoins are usually pegged one-to-one to the value of other assets, protecting them from the volatility seen in other cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. All right. Now, the Trump administration is all in favor of this, so that's why you're seeing this with the Genius Act. It's I know even I have a hard time understanding all this stuff with cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. You know, I'm from the old school as far as I myself am concerned. I'm always going to be dealing with the U.S. currency, but I know a lot of the younger people are really starting to take interest in Bitcoin, and it's supposed to be the next up and coming thing. And of course, the Trump family has dumped millions, if not billions, of dollars into it. And so they got a personal interest as well in it. So there you go. The Trump administration, this is a sad story, but I need to bring this out. That's the purpose of my podcast, bringing out some of the news that other mainstream media might pass over or not talk about a lot. And this is disgusting. The Trump administration has ordered 550 tons of emergency food aid, enough to feed 1.5 million malnourished children for a week, to be incinerated, done away with, rather than being distributed as part of its ongoing purge of USAID. As you know, USAID is the program that Trump killed. And that agency, they were in charge of distributing foreign aid to third world countries, and he doesn't like that. So the high energy biscuits, this is what being destroyed, was intended for children under 5 years of age living in a war and disaster zones, like perhaps the Gaza Strip or perhaps like Ukraine. And they were currently being stored in a warehouse in Dubai and were meant to be shipped out this year, but will be instead go to waste due to the cuts by the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, effectively halting nearly all forms of foreign aid. Current and former aid workers, speaking on a condition of anonymity for fear of retaliation, told the media that the sheer scale of waste is unprecedented. Despite repeated assurances from the administration not to eliminate food aid, the U.S. warehouses around the world currently housing 60,000 tons of food, including peas and cereal, originally bound for families stricken in Sudan, which is one of the countries that help, which was to be administered by now unable. They can't deliver it, even if they wanted to, after gutting USAID and firing logistical experts that were supposed to handle it. Their jobs are gone too. According to the media, the Atlantic in this particular case, the amount of food set to be incinerated would be enough to feed every single child currently starving in the Gaza Strip. There you go. Every single child in the Gaza Strip, under 5 and even a little bit older than that, could have been fed by this food that is going to be incinerated and done away with. I hope the Republicans are really happy about that. That is just freaking disgusting to do that. I'm sorry that just breaks my heart that somebody would have the audacity to do that and not even think about the kids. Just get rid of it. See, you get to this point where these people they become blanketed from the outside world. You get a lot of these Republicans, they're living in these fancy condos, and a lot of the Republicans have millions. They're all billionaires, millionaires. They become insensitive to how the real people live. They don't give a crap, as long as it doesn't affect them personally or their families affect them personally, to hell with everybody else, and they just don't have a think outside, what's really going on. And I can't believe that the Republican Party has become this hardened that they think like that. It's just sad. It really, really is. Now I'm going to move on to Florida news before I wrap everything up. So let's talk about Corey Mills. He's one of the Florida reps. And guess what? A Washington property management company wants to evict U.S. Representative Corey Mills after claiming that he owes thousands of dollars in back rent. Documents filed in Superior Court claim that the Florida Republican owes more than $85,000. Yes, I said that right. $85,000 for rent on his penthouse from March through July. In a response, Mills blamed faulty payment links, claiming he has had repeated issues getting those payments through. Oh, really? Well, you haven't heard like walking over and writing a check out or something like that? Of course, they probably want a certified check by now. So on X, he posted, here's the past 2 months where you can see I'm repeatedly trying to ask for payment. He's trying to, cover up for that. And again, as I tried with management today, it just failed to process. He doesn't think there's any, maybe the guy takes PayPal, perhaps he does that, or a Zello. Have you ever tried that? Zelle, there's other ways to pay people. But yeah, you can look up what Congress, these people in Congress and Senate, they make a lot of money, folks. They vote themselves pay raises every year. No matter whatever else people can suffer, Congress makes sure that they get themselves taken care of. And when you've been in for 2 years, you get lifelong insurance benefits. You never have to pay a damn dime for medical care. It's all handed to you. You get $85 a day to go out to lunch with somebody, where people on food stamps, $7.50 barely buys one meal. These people have money coming out where. And this guy here cannot pay his rent. I mean, I really question about what he is able to do with his money. He's got something else going on. It's obvious, or he's just living. Even with this, he's living way beyond his pay grade. I don't know, but there you go. Donald Trump, there, he has the same issues. This guy's got so much money that he can't figure out what's really going on. So let's talk about the last segment here. Mr. Ron DeSantis. Governor Ron DeSantis in the state of Florida is now seeing a huge amount of lawsuits going on. And you know what the lawsuits are over? They're over Alligator Alcatraz. That's what these lawsuits are going over. And, of course, Ron DeSantis has tried to defend all of these lawsuits and all the negativism about Alligator Alcatraz. Watch this clip.
A lot of great plans for how they handle everything that happened. And so that's just not an issue. But it's temporary because the reason why we're doing it is because DHS does not have enough space to process, detain, and then deport the aliens, the illegal aliens that are being apprehended, not just in Florida, but throughout the country. There's a chronic shortage of space to be able to do it. You know, a lot of people in the media will say, well, they're not getting due process. No, the whole reason why you have these things put up is because there is a process that the federal government has to go through. I can tell you a lot of other countries would never go through any of this process. So they're doing that. So they now have an influx of cash, and so they're going to be increasing their ability to be able to do it. So look, what I would prefer as governor is, yes, we're going to be working, all law enforcement agencies in Florida are required to work with DHS to enforce immigration law and assist with deportations. But I would love for that to be, our guys are out on task force, our highway patrol are picking people up, we're doing what needs to be, and then turn over to DHS, and then they handle everything from there. From a governor's perspective, I would much rather that be the case. The reality is, after 4 years of Biden really decimating ICE and DHS, they don't have near the resources that they need. And so the number one thing, when we would talk to people like Tom Homan, okay, what do we need to do? Because, you know, the border was great to shut down, but the interior enforcement, it's hard to get that going. What do you need? Well, we want cooperation, but we also want to be able to have space. So we can't use all of our jails in Florida for this because we actually have criminal, U.S. citizen criminals that have to be held accountable. And that's the main focus of that. That's a criminal justice system. That's different than immigration enforcement. So we expanded this. We also have grant money from the bill I signed earlier where sheriffs and police can do some expansion on their own if they want to. And I think you're going to see some that are going to do that. We're going to be processing some of this soon. But the reality is, if DHS had the money a year ago that they have now, they probably would have enough capacity to be able to process the number of people that are being. But, you know, we're doing, just in Florida, you know, you have hundreds of illegal aliens apprehended a day.
And so there you go. He says, you know, these people have a chance to get out of the country. You know, we got a plane ticket for them. You know, everything's been done right. You know, I can't see whether all this fuss is over Alligator Alcatraz. So one thing that Ron forgot to do, he didn't, when he put in Alligator Alcatraz and decided to move ahead with this and got all this money from FEMA to put it in there, he didn't even tell the county surrounding Alligator Alcatraz. He didn't tell the Native Americans they have land around Alligator Alcatraz. He did not tell one soul about what he was going to do. He just went ahead and ordered his state attorney general to get it done without talking to anybody around there. So that's where a lot of people are upset, and this is why he's getting the lawsuits now. And they're getting the lawsuits because when he did a tour for the local representatives, the local congressional district from around the state of Florida to tour Alligator Alcatraz, he thought that'd be a cool thing. Well, a lot of the Democrats that were able to do the tours, they immediately held press conferences and started talking about the deplorable conditions there. It's very humane. There's been people finding crap in their food. It's infested. The drinking water comes out of the same place where they defecate in, the toilets, and there's very few of those toilets there. And the living conditions are horrendous in the heat. And but he's trying not to walk it all back and saying, well, you know, that's not true, blah, 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 blah. So it's pretty sad what's going on there with Alligator Alcatraz. And the lawsuits, I truly believe are need to be done because that place is not fit for humans to live in right now. And then, of course, they want to reopen the main Alcatraz off of San Francisco. Trump, as I just mentioned, is putting $2 billion in that. So there you go. That's my edition of The Right Has Left for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to your comments. Things just get crazier and crazier. And until then, you all try to have a good week. I'm Roy Garden. Talk to you later.